I'm Josh Phangurha, and I've been fascinated by the natural world for as long as I can remember. This endless curiosity towards life on Earth has taken me to some of the most remote and biodiverse places on the planet. But here, at home in England, there's one animal that grabs my attention more than most. Seldom seen by the general public, it's an animal that seems to strike a combination of fear and intrigue among the people I've spoken to in the countryside. It's a species that's often misunderstood, and due to various factors, it has rapidly declined in the UK. This is a story about the UK's only venomous snake. The adder, Britain's vanishing viper. It's early March in southern England, and the first signs of spring are beginning to appear. This male adder is emerging from his winter den, also known as a hibernaculum, for the first time in months. After being in darkness throughout the winter to escape harsh conditions, he's desperate to bask in the sun. Adders are reptiles, and reptiles are ectothermic, which means the environmental temperature determines their activity and bodily functions. But it's not just the sun's heat he is seeking. At this time of year, absorbing as much UV as possible is vital for the generation of sperm within his body, preparing him for the breeding season in a month's time. He expands his ribs to flatten his body, maximizing his surface area to absorb heat and UV more efficiently. He also sways his head from side to side, a behavior which is not fully understood. One theory suggests that these head movements optimize olfactory sensitivity to detect the scent of other adders. Other male adders of varying colour are emerging as well. Some of them nestle within the fronds of dead bracken, where their zigzag pattern is especially effective in remaining unseen by predators. Males often bask together in groups as they seek out the best sun traps in the vegetation. For now, they tolerate each other, but in a month's time, when the breeding season starts, this won't be the case, as they become competitors. Some individuals show a high degree of black pigment called melanin. There's research suggesting that melanistic adders have some physiological benefits. This includes absorbing heat faster and becoming active earlier in the day, providing a competitive advantage over non-melanistic snakes while breeding and hunting. The trade-off to this is being more visible to predators due to the lack of cryptic patterning. Perhaps this is an adaptation to the colder northern regions of adder distribution, where melanistic colour forms are abundant. However, some adder populations in warmer southern regions show melanism too, and other studies have shown no physiological differences between colour forms. Another explanation for this colour variation may be due to a process called negative frequency dependent selection. This is where the effectiveness of a trait decreases as it becomes more common. In adder populations, this is thought to be driven by the likelihood of being eaten by a predator. A study from Sweden investigated this over an incredible 37 years. The results suggest that the number of black and zigzag patterned adders in a population fluctuates over time depending on which colour form is more common. For example, if there are more zigzag patterned snakes than black snakes in a population, then the zigzag individuals are statistically more likely to be eaten by predators. This means more black snakes survive and pass on their genes to the next generation, resulting in an increase in black individuals over time. In theory, there will come a time when the black adders are more common than the zigzag ones, and the process is reversed in a continuous cycle. This may explain why adders exhibit a range of colours, but this study focused only on a Swedish island where crows are the main predator. Further research on other adder populations with a wider array of habitats and predators is needed to better understand this phenomena. This melanistic juvenile, which was born last year, is also emerging. The oak leaves surrounding it, which are around 4 inches long, show how tiny this snake is. Its scales are dusted with soil after emerging from its winter retreat. Females tend to emerge slightly later than males, but emergence times can vary depending on weather conditions. This large female is exploring her surroundings above ground for the first time this year. Apart from melanistic individuals, females tend to boast warm brown colours with a less contrasting zigzag pattern. They're also larger and stockier than the males, but one thing both genders have in common is a pair of beautiful ruby red eyes. Her forked tongue flickers, reeling in scent molecules to a specialised organ in the roof of her mouth known as the Jacobson's organ. This organ processes molecules and sends information to her brain. For example, if the left-sided prong of the fork is picking up a stronger scent of potential prey, the snake knows to move in that direction. This young female has also just emerged, and is accompanied by a wolf spider, which is using her as a sunbed. Invertebrates are also ectothermic and need warmth to function, so they seek out optimal basking areas just like adders. Another example of this is unfolding nearby, as a viviparous lizard is joined by a 7-spotted ladybird to soak up the sun. These small lizards are one of the main prey species in an adder's diet, especially for juvenile snakes. All seems fine as adders continue to enjoy the first few days of spring. But in a nearby area, tragedy strikes. An adder, scalded by a heathland fire, lies motionless on the blackened ground. Wildfires in this habitat are known to occur, but this is more sinister. According to firefighters, it was caused by arson. A group of teenagers from the nearby housing estate were reported to have started this fire. For what reason, I don't know, but I don't think they understand the extent of the damage they've caused, costing the lives of countless protected reptiles and other species. I arrive on site to collect any surviving animals before they're picked off by predators.
We're at the scene of the fire, which happened here about a week ago now, and we're still finding casualties in the form of lots of dead slow worms that have been affected by the fire. And the reason I'm here next to this mound is because this is a reptile hibernation den, or a hibernaculum, and over the past week or so we've seen lots of reptiles, including adders and lizards, coming out to bask on this mound as they usually would. But the problem now is that the vegetation has gone from the mound, and now they're a lot more exposed to predators. So when adders and lizards come out to bask on a nice sunny day, a buzzard from above, which is one of the main predators of adders, can see them quite easily, and they get picked off almost immediately. So the fire itself is not just dangerous to the reptiles, but the consequences after the fire in terms of risk to predation is increased. We've been collecting reptiles over the past, since the fire started, and we've collected about 10 adders and about the same number of lizards, but unfortunately slow worms, which is our only legless lizard in the UK, have done quite badly in the fire, and we found about 10 dead slow worms during our search.
We also continue to find more deceased adders, including this small juvenile which has died within its first year of life. As adder habitat becomes increasingly fragmented by human development, the snakes are living closer to people with no way to disperse from the area. Not only does this cause inbreeding and reduced genetic health, it also makes them more vulnerable to situations like this. This is not the first fire to occur in this area. Many of the previous fires have been caused by disposable barbecues not being disposed of, cigarette butts carelessly thrown into dry vegetation, and more. And if that wasn't enough pressure on these snakes, the warming climate is increasing the likelihood of fires due to drought. It's a miracle there's any adders left here at all. It's coming to the end of March, and the eyes of male adders are turning cloudy blue. This is a key sign they will soon shed their skins, as the cloudiness is caused by fluid building up between the old outer skin layer and the new skin beneath. A protective scale covering each eye is also replaced, as snakes don't have eyelids. Just before adders shed their skin, the eye goes back to the normal piercing red colour. This individual is in that phase as its skin begins to peel from its back. Snakes mainly shed their skin in order to grow. Since their skin doesn't grow with them, they must remove it so it can be replaced with a new layer. Sometimes the skin is removed in one complete piece, and other times it comes off in several pieces. The habitat becomes littered with adder skins at this time of year while they go through this process. Before non-melanistic males shed their skins, they could be confused with females due to their brown coloration. But once the skin is removed, they go through a jaw-dropping transformation. Their black zigzag is now on a canvas of light silver, and some individuals even appear to be black and white. There are studies to support the hypothesis that this striking display could serve as a warning to predators, advertising the snake's venomous nature. This makes sense, as male adders become more active after shedding, while they gear up for breeding and are more likely to encounter predators. British weather can always take an unexpected turn, as this male gets caught out in heavy hail. But this is no problem for adders, as they are one of the most northerly reptiles in the world, occurring well within the Arctic Circle. This makes them one of the most cold-tolerant reptiles, and so this male waits it out as ice-cold beads bounce off his body. Spring is now in full swing. And at the turn of April, this male adder is in search of a female. As he moves through the undergrowth, he flicks his black forked tongue in hope of picking up the scent of his next potential mate. But in order to gain the right to mate, he must challenge this adder, the biggest, strongest alpha male in the area. Rival males that come within his territory are often chased away with aggression. While others fear approaching him at all. But this male is braver than most. He gingerly approaches the alpha male and challenges him for dominance. This can only mean one thing: battle. This is a test of strength, as one viper tries to pin the other to the ground. Whoever gets the most pins and shows superior endurance can win this fight. The larger male is too powerful, and chases yet another rival out of his territory. The female they were fighting over was watching on nearby, but during the fight, a third male made his move to mate with her. Female adders in the breeding season are promiscuous and will mate with multiple males, so she accepts this male and proceeds to copulate with him. They both seem to wiggle their tails with excitement. This male grasped his opportunity to pass on his genes to the next generation, while the alpha male was distracted. In a woodland edge population, this large female is also attracting the attention of males as she remains cryptic in the bracken. It's not long until two males are settling their dispute over who has the right to mate with her. Male adders with high melanism live here too, and cruise through the undergrowth towards the action. The same pair of males are fighting again, but this time they are interrupted. Melanistic male charged with determination to mate battles and chases away rival males from the female. And just when he thinks he has her all to himself, a larger male appears to challenge him. Different pair of melanistic snakes are also in combat. The loser realigns his jaw after taking a few bumps to the mouth, revealing 2 venom-injecting fangs which are protected by a fleshy sheath. Multiple males continue to come and go, with varying success with the female. They are hyper-focused on breeding and seem oblivious to my presence. Combat isn't always necessary to settle mating rights. Some think twice about their approach. While others stand guard over the female. And larger males dethrone the male guarding her by displaying superior size and physicality. She remains still and seemingly unbothered as the chaos ensues around her. During adder courtship, the male repeatedly taps his head along the female's body until she decides whether to mate with him or not. As this pair caught in the open, The difference in size and colour between both genders is clear, with the smaller silver and black male contrasting with the brown female. This is known as sexual dimorphism. After successful courtship, the male inserts one of his two penises, known as hemipenes, into the female's cloaca and mating begins. Having two makes getting into position easier, especially when you have no legs. Having a backup means he can swap once he's done to double ensure fertilization. Another big female lives in this area and she's ready to breed. She's showing melanism like many of the males here. She has likely contributed to the high percentage of black snakes in this population over the years. A male has found her by scent, and she's quick to accept his efforts. He appears to be partially melanistic and glows with a steely blue colour in the right light. The difference between darker male and female adders is not as clear, but the size difference remains the same, and the male will often show more, albeit faint, patterning along his body. Males of all colour forms also tend to have black bordering on the scales around the snout, but there can be exceptions. They continue to mate for hours, close to a public footpath, where people walk past unaware. As the warm sun shines, they continuously slither around in circles while mating. Why this is, I don't know, but they seem to be having fun. A few days pass, and a different male is now courting her, showing again how females are not loyal to one partner. The breeding season is now coming to an end, and she basks in the sun with the next generation of adders developing inside of her. Females tend to avoid breeding every year, as it's extremely energetically costly. So it's an important time in this female's life, and let's hope she goes on to produce healthy babies later in the year. She will now focus on feeding as she waits for her young to develop and be born in late summer or autumn. Adders feed on a range of small animals, including rodents, lizards, and birds. These young wrens are an easy target, and adders have been seen hunting this species. Nick Dobbs captured this rare footage of a male adder eating a wren in Dorset. The snake would have struck the bird with a venomous bite to kill it beforehand. As with most snakes, the prey is swallowed whole, using incredible stretchy ligaments in the lower jaw. In other parts of the country, a different kind of threat is looming on adder populations, and I've been contracted by an ecological consultancy to help mitigate the impact. The reason I'm holding this adder, this beautiful, partially melanistic adder, is because its habitat is sadly going to be destroyed by a quarry. Now, the quarry is about 200 meters just over there, and I'm currently at what we call a receptor site, and that's an area of suitable habitat where there's already an existing population of adders to release the individuals that would be otherwise affected by the quarry. In other words, they would face certain death if we didn't move them. Now, I would prefer not to move them, but because they're going to face certain death in this quarry that's going to impact their habitat, the best solution is to take them somewhere like this where they at least have a chance. The problem is that adders are very spatially aware animals, and they often use the same feeding areas every year, the same hibernation dens, and when you move them somewhere they're not familiar with, they become somewhat disorientated, and it may take a while for them to become adjusted to this new area. Now, this is a large male, and we're releasing him into an area where there's already a healthy adder population, so he has a good chance of finding a female. This is also an example of why the adder's bad reputation is so undeserved. As you can see, this animal just wants to get away and is showing no sign of aggression. In fact, when I initially caught him, he didn't try to bite or anything like that. But right now, I'm not applying any pressure to him, not restraining him in any way, because that may cause him to want to bite in self-defense. But if I let him move freely through my hands, he's quite relaxed. How adders fare after being moved due to a development is not truly known, and what needs to happen is a lot of post-monitoring of these populations once they're moved into a receptor site. Now, thankfully, this project on this quarry is allowing that. It's entirely up to the landowner whether he wants to pay for these extra surveys, and thankfully this chap does. That means we can monitor adders just like this one and all the others that are released here over time to see how they're getting on, basically, and whether or not translocations are negatively impacting adders, or if there's some success stories.
Now, I think this is going to vary depending on the quality of the habitat they're being introduced to, the size of the existing population in the receptor site. I think here they've got a good chance because the habitat is brilliant, and I would say actually better than where he was found. And there's already a large population of adders here, so I think he's going to be okay. But the key in this project is to give adders a chance and for them not to be squashed by the machinery. Now, you may have noticed these bright red bite-proof gloves I'm wearing. He's not biting at all, but even if he wanted to bite these gloves, I'd be safe. But in the highly unfortunate event that someone is bitten by an adder, death is highly unlikely, and pretty much everyone who has been bitten, the few people who have, recover with treatment.
To put this into perspective, there have been 14 human deaths by adder bite in the past 150 years, the last one being in 1975. It is still a venomous snake, however, and should be treated with respect and only handled by an experienced person when necessary.
So now that I've shown you that these snakes are not out to get you, they're pretty harmless if you just leave them alone. Don't believe what you see in the papers about these snakes. It's all total rubbish, and tabloids that just demonise not only adders but all wildlife in the UK.
This headline even claims that an adder gatecrashed a child's birthday party when it was in fact the family cat that brought it in. Feral cats are an invasive species and kill wildlife en masse every year.
So as part of the post-monitoring project, once the quarry has been dug, is to try and identify individuals that we've released, and over time we can do that by taking photographs of the top of their heads when we catch them. So on the top of each adder's head is a unique marking, like a fingerprint, something we can use to identify individuals in the future. And if we find individuals that we released, that's good news. It means they're getting on okay. If more adder translocation projects can get funding to post-monitor the population after it's been moved, and we can figure out how translocations are affecting adders, if it turns out there's quite a negative impact, perhaps this can lead to a legislative change, which would mean developers are obliged to pay for post-monitoring. In my opinion, with the state of adder populations around the country and the rate at which they're declining, they should be granted more heavy protection, perhaps on the same level as the great crested newt, for example. So I think it's time to let this chap go, and let's wish him the very best in this beautiful habitat.
Not all adders have a large area of connected and extensive habitat to be relocated to, and relocation away from development sites is not sustainable. They need to be left alone where they are, but the greed for land exploitation is making this very difficult to achieve. Adders face many threats, but the shrinking and fragmentation of their habitat is perhaps the most severe. And they're not even safe on some nature reserves, as vegetation is cut or grazed for other species, but reduces cover for the snakes. Even hibernation dens have been destroyed during reserve management, often due to the lack of knowledge of where the dens are located. Another serious problem is the mass release of non-native pheasants in the countryside for game shooting. These birds originate in Asia, where they frequently eat snakes, and they are hunting adders and other native reptiles in the UK. Other issues include public pressure through trampling of vegetation, disturbance by people and their off-lead dogs, and as previously mentioned, fires. Adders live in a range of habitats, from scrubland, grassland and woodland edges. They also live in lowland heath, which is especially beautiful in the height of summer. It's August, and the heather is in full bloom, creating a sea of pink and purple in the muggy heat. This female adder mated months ago and is now heavily pregnant. She exposes her bulging body to the sun for prolonged periods, tolerating warmer temperatures than usual to aid the development of her babies within. She'll be ready to give birth any day now. A newborn adder, which is scientifically known as a neonate, is usually coppery in colour and minuscule in size at around 15 centimetres in length, although this can vary. Adders are oviviparous, which means they don't lay external eggs. Instead, eggs develop and hatch inside the female, and the babies are born in a thin, transparent, embryonic sac. They then break out of the sac shortly after birth. Tiny viviparous lizards are born at around the same time and are a key component of a young adder's diet. Pregnant females will also use heat-conducting artificial material to hide under while they internally brood their young, including onduline and metal. Adders are attracted to these sheets throughout the spring and autumn too, and are used by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Amphibian and Reptile Group to monitor reptile populations. Surveys are conducted ideally once per month to minimize disturbance. I agreed to meet with the chairman of the group, Pete Gillett, to discuss this work further.
Prime objective is to survey for native species, reptile and amphibians. That information all gets captured into a national IT system called ArgWeb. The land managers, of which there are countless across the various counties, have access into that IT system. They can then see at their particular sites, wherever we are surveying, they can see which species are found, when they found, where they particularly found, the goal being that they can then manage their habitat management activities on evidence-based records as opposed to just anecdotes. So that's our key reason for existence, and our key objective is the surveying and the recording and providing of that information to land managers towards conservation efforts. There are, during the summer months, a number of fairs, conservation-related events and that sort of thing that we are invited to. We've got a big old gazebo, we put that up. We have a number of our members at the gazebo, basically just engaging with the public, trying to drum up some enthusiasm within the public about these animals. Very often reptiles and amphibians are much maligned. You know, it's the feathered and the furry animals that get all the best interest and the best media out there. So we try to encourage people to enjoy the herpetological species that we've got here. We also take part in animal rescues after there have been fires. in certain areas on the heathlands and what have you. We'll go out with buckets and things to collect animals and then move them back into suitable areas. We engage with schools, we engage with various organisations in terms of just generally promoting these animals, and hoping that all of that works towards protecting the environment that they live in. So in terms of a number of surveys that we do and the people that do them, we currently have around 230 transects across Hampshire. We've got some on the Isle of Wight as well, although not particularly often visited. The biggest challenge that we've got at the moment is not setting up more transects and finding more areas to survey. It's having enough people to survey them. So the goal is essentially to have each one of these transects surveyed once a month, at least during the summer months. Ideally, we want 6 surveys per year per transect, and all of that over the long term provides a really good data set in terms of what the animals are doing on those transects, on those heathlands, the commons, where we find them, and in the ponds where we're looking for amphibians and things as well. The important thing is that these surveys are undertaken routinely over the long term. A snapshot survey does not give you a proper impression or proper idea of what's actually happening on that site. If we take adders, for example, they come out of hibernation, they remain close to their hibernacula for a little while. They then go off into sort of, they find their mates, they do some mate guarding, they breed. The females tend to stay in that area, but the males move off to somewhere else to go for their summer feeding areas. And so just doing a snapshot survey at middle of April, you're only going to get a picture of what those animals are doing then. But what about the rest of the season? So you've really got to understand what they're doing. Our biggest challenge at the moment is probably getting enough people involved and taking part. Feet on the floor is absolutely vital to us. So unlike most or many other organizations that will do a lot of fundraising, gather funds and then employ people to go out and do things, we're not on that side of things. We don't do things that way. We're volunteers, and what we're looking to do is encourage more volunteers interested in wildlife, interested in these species, to come out, get involved, put feet in the field and go and look for them and provide back the records that they find. We've got a lot of members. We do a lot of training of people in terms of how to do this. It's a very, very simple process. It's some online training to understand how the IT system works. There's a little bit of field training in terms of where to find the animals and how to do this safely with minimum disturbance to the animals. But finding enough people who are interested in actually going out, walking in the countryside, enjoying sunny days out, looking for animals, that is a major challenge. People will happily donate money, people will happily offer advice, people will happily tell us where they've seen things and where we should set up more transects, but when inviting them to come along and do some actual surveying, then they've got other priorities and then they seem to disappear. So if there are people that are interested in becoming surveyors, that is an absolute huge need from our perspective, and we really do. We encourage people and we welcome people to get on board. Our motto is conservation via empathy through engagement. So what we want to do is we want to engage with people, get them engaged with nature, get them engaged with the animals out there. That creates an empathy, and all of that turns back and results in conservation efforts being successful. So success stories there certainly are. There's a few areas where we've worked very, very well with the local conservation teams. So there's an area in Silchester where they've got their own conservation group, volunteer group. They worked with us to set up 5 transects in that particular area. They go out, they schedule themselves, they do their own surveying, they log the records into our system, and then at the end of each year they review those records and decide where they're going to do their habitat management. certain of the areas that we survey with Forestry England, been very, very successful with them as well. There's some areas that are absolutely core populations, or that hold absolutely core populations of adders within the forests, where we're able to share that information with them. Very often it depends on the person on the ground, the ranger that you're talking to. If they are interested, they will go out of their way to actually preserve that area for those species for years to come. So we've had some very, very good close cooperation with Forestry England in some of their areas. And then, interestingly enough, there's been a lot of close cooperation with some private landowners who have areas on their private farms, private land, that have good populations of certain of the species, and where we can get in there and we do the surveys and we provide that information to them, invariably we found that they are really, really interested in preserving those populations, and they'll work with us and come back to us and ask for advice, etc., to the point where they have extended and opened up areas where those animals exist on their land. And some of the landowners have also been very, very keen to put in new ponds around amphibian habitat and that sort of thing as well. So yes, I think there's a long way to go. People do and are probably keener to support, and they're more used to supporting things related to bats, bat conservation, bees. If you talk to people about bees, they all understand the importance of bee conservation. People do battle to understand the importance and the relevance of reptile and amphibian conservation, but I think we are getting the message out there, and it is certainly, it's working. It's just very, very slow progress, and we're hoping that we can continue to do this in the years to come.
Paul Baker is a long-term member of the group and has recorded a staggering 7,767 reptiles since he joined in 2020.
I've always been interested in natural history, and in 2020 I was looking for something to occupy my time, and I saw sort of a call out for surveyors and training, and so I turned out for a training session with our chairman of HIWARG, and I've been going doing surveys ever since. And because I've got a lot of spare time, I'm quite often leading the way with surveys. I could do 2 or 3 a week sometimes. And the reason I do it is that the data we collect is quite important, because you can go to visit sites and either decide whether there's reptiles present or absent, and whereabouts on a site they're found. And that sort of data is really valuable to land managers, because when they're doing work on the site, they can avoid areas that are high vernacular, where reptiles hide and things like that. So that's mainly the reason I do it, and I like to be out in the open air. So far this season I've generated 948 records, so doing well. I mean, when I survey, I'm looking for everything really, but it's quite important, because adders are in decline, that adder sightings are quite important to record. And I think it was about my 5th or 6th survey that I first saw an adder, and it was a little red juvenile, and I've never forgotten seeing that. But after that day, I visited various other sites, and I started to see them more. So it was almost like that was a kickstart to seeing adders there.
Mireia Lauria is a newer member and is still honing her survey skills while she studies a biodiversity conservation MSc at Bournemouth University.
Well, I've wanted to kind of do more conservation stuff for quite a long time. And I thought that this would be a really good start, and everyone seems really keen, so it's good to get out with people who know where to look for things and help out in any way that you can. I've read a few pieces here and there about, especially like how climate change is affecting them, but also how there's just less space for them to move around. And so I think if we can do anything to kind of count their numbers and, you know, see how they're doing, and if that can go somewhere to someone who knows more than me, then that's great.
Yeah.
As Maria mentions, climate change is affecting adders in many ways. Research has shown that drier, hotter summers can reduce adder survival rates due to drought and less abundant prey. They are also emerging earlier and going into their winter dens later than ever before. In some parts of the country, they're even active in every winter month during mild weather spells. The problem with this is that the weather can change very quickly to frosty conditions, which catches the snakes out and kills them. Even the most northerly snake on the planet can't cope with this. They are also more prone to predation when they become sluggish during the sudden temperature drops. Furthermore, the snakes are using more energy during the colder months than they ever have, when they should be preserving their energy throughout the winter. This adversely affects body condition when the breeding season comes, which can reduce reproductive success.
Sometimes I know that other members have said that sometimes they can be happy to share the data with conservationists for like bigger studies about stuff, so if that can happen as well, that's pretty cool. You know, it feels like you're actually contributing to science as well as, you know, their conservation. So yeah, it just feels like you're part of something, which is nice. I think the training was awesome because Ben actually came out, you know, from Portsmouth and came to see me just for a few hours. Just me and him, and we did some training quite close to where I live, which was very kind of him to do. And I think a lot of other groups, you know, you have to kind of go far away, you know, for long periods of time, and it's kind of, you know, it's not, it just feels like everyone really wants to get people involved and will kind of help in any way that they can. You know, like I can message Ben or yourself, you know, most hours of the day, and you give me lots of advice and helpful tips. So I don't think that's something that other groups have as much. Like I haven't tried myself, but I know of people who've tried to do things like bird ringing, and it's just been virtually impossible to get involved with. So I think for young people especially, this is, you know, a really good way to get into the industry if you care about conservation and ecology, and it's a really good start and something that you can keep doing alongside, you know, working, because, you know, I think if you're going to learn from people like this who give their free time, then it's a good way to kind of give back, and yeah, it just feels like a good thing to do. Oh, they're pretty cool. I think when I was younger, I didn't actually know that there were snakes in the UK. You know, I'm from Italy, so I thought it was more in like kind of mainland Europe rather than on an island, you know, where it's raining and not nice weather most of the time. So I was like, oh, they're not going to want to hang out here. So it's kind of cool that actually there is a species that has made its home here, and yeah, it's pretty beautiful. So yeah.
What were your thoughts when you first saw one? Was that the one?
Yeah, with you. Yeah, that was the first time I was with you a few years ago, and I just thought it was just incredible. You know, they're bigger than I thought they were going to be. They're not massive, but they're bigger than I thought, and just the red eyes are just so unique.
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool snake. So I didn't know loads about them before. You know, I've only started reading stuff up now. Really, I'm in the middle of reading a book about reptiles to try and learn more myself for the future. But no, I've never really been particularly afraid of snakes. I've always thought they were really cool ever since I was a kid. I thought they were just lovely creatures and an important part of the ecosystem. So yeah, big fan.
It's now autumn here in southern England, and as golden leaves fall around me and fungi emerges over the land, adders are slowly moving underground to escape the harsh conditions of the approaching winter. As the temperature drops, the snakes will slow down their metabolisms and enter a state of dormancy known as brumation. Most snakes will be safe in their winter dens, but when they emerge in spring, there's an array of challenges they may have to face. Since the early 2000s, UK adder populations have declined by a staggering 40%, and 90% of populations are small, isolated, and continue to plummet. So you may be wondering, what can you do to help? Well, I think a good first step is to join your local amphibian and reptile group. ARG UK is a nationwide charity dedicated to the conservation of reptiles and amphibians. It's often possible to get training in surveying and recording adders, and it provides an opportunity to join workshops like habitat management for the snakes. Getting to know other members of the group will expand your knowledge beyond belief. I know this because I'm a member of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight amphibian and reptile group myself. The adder records which amphibian and reptile groups collect often gets passed on to landowners. Landowners can then use this information to manage their land more sensitively for the snakes. And I've seen countless examples of this with my local amphibian and reptile group. I think it's about time we gave Britain's viper a helping hand before it's too late.